So much, Mary, for inviting me. I love Jesu, so it's nice to be here. And I get to be with my girlfriend Molly, so I'm happy always to spend time with Mother Power. So my name is Brother Matt. I grew up on the East Coast, as Mary said. I went to Georgetown Prep, which is Ignatius for Maryland, an all-boys Jesuit prep school. I graduated from John Carroll University. I studied political science. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I thought law school or something. Some people want to become a religious or a priest from when they're young. I was not one of those people. I always thought those kids were a little bit weird. They were playing mass and I was like being a fireman. We were doing different things. And so after going to a Jesuit high school, Jesuit university, I served with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps for 2 years in Belize. I had these stirrings that maybe there was some movement here for me to join the Jesuits. That was a shock to my then girlfriend at the time. I had some tough news to break to her. She has 2 children now. She's doing fine. So I had this sit-down conversation with my mom, and I said, Mom, there's something kind of scary I need to tell you. It felt like, like coming out of the Jesuit closet. Like there's something I need to tell you about myself. And she goes, of course, where did you think this was going? She goes, Jesuit high school, Jesuit college, Jesuit volunteer. She's like, why do you not see the writing on the wall? So moms always know, as they say. Moms always know. So I joined the Jesuits, and then about 6 months later, I said, no, Mom, I want to become a Jesuit brother, not a priest. And I explained what that is, and the easiest way for me to describe that, it's like being a boy nun. They're sisters, I'm brother. We don't say mass. Teach, help the poor, live in community, same kind of deal. And so then my mom said, wait a second, no grandkids and no sacraments? What am I getting out of this? Well, Sheila, it's just not about you. But I always say that my vocation and all vocations come from grandmother's prayers. So I believe that my vocation came from my grandmother. So my grandmother was an immigrant from Newfoundland. She has an Irish accent and a daily mass goer, really steadfast in the faith. And I remember her teaching me the rosary when I was very young. And then as her life was coming to her last chapters, I remember praying the rosary and holding her hand as she was in bed, and this kind of full circle moment. And so don't underestimate your own prayers. You might not see the fruit right away, but I do believe that women are the soul of the church, and I do believe that women's prayers matter in ways that we don't always see. So I tell my grandmother in her thick Irish brogue, muscling up the courage to tell her I want to become a Jesuit. This woman goes to church every single day. She's friends with bishops and cardinals. She's someone in the church. She's a Dame of Malta, whatever that means. And so I tell her I want to become a Jesuit. She has 9 children and 50 grandchildren. I'm the only one who has decided to pursue this. So I'm thinking I'm going to get some credit. Catholic grandmother, proud. And she goes, oh, Jesus, Mary, and Holy St. Joseph Matthew, not the God-forsaken Jesuits. I said, okay, Graham, I don't think we get to pick and choose the vocation here. Also, nobody else goes to church, so, a little applause would be fine. So I've joined the Jesuits. I've been a Jesuit for about 15 years, and I love it. I'm so happy. Coming from an all-boy family, being with the guys, being with older men has been really special throughout my whole life. And so now I live with the older guys across the street, and I love it. I love the ways that I can show up in the world. I love that I'm a brother, which is a peer relationship. A father or mother has some sort of power implied. Sister and brother are horizontal, and I really like that. I want to be with people where they are. I want to be with you where you are. I want to be with the young people at John Carroll where they are. And it's been really neat to lean into that vocation. And our vocations are all different. Your beautiful vocations are just as important as mine. And I like that I'm a lay person. I'm not a priest or a deacon. And so if you are married, you have consecrated vows like I do. I have vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And nobody understands the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience quite like a married person, frankly. I always say my brothers are married. Poverty, their money is not their money. Their money goes to the unit. Chastity, just because you might find someone attractive or find a real spark with someone, but you're committed to what you're committed to. And obedience, there are Sunday mornings where my brothers are hungover and want to lay and watch football, and they're picking out blinds at Pier 1. the obedience of the unit. They have to go do what is asked of them. And you all know that so well in your lives of service with your families and children and grandchildren. And so I have a couple thoughts for Lent. We start Lent tomorrow, and I want to kind of reframe the way we think about Lent, because frequently with Lent, we can kind of fall into some old tropes, right? At least I do. I'm going to give up sweets, or I'm going to pray more. And it's always kind of half-hearted, at least for me. It can feel half-hearted. You can fall into this thing that you always do. So what I'd like you to think about with Lent, prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, I want you to think about it like a relationship. Your relationship with God is real. And your relationship with your family members and your friends are also real. So I want you to think, what helps your relationship with your friends? Raise a hand. What helps you with a relationship with a friend? What's something that helps you in your relationship? Yeah.
Spending time together.
Spending time together. Great.
Keeping in touch at a distance.
Keeping in touch. Checking in. Yeah. Listening. Yeah. What else helps your friends? Friends you haven't seen in a while, friends you see all the time.
Helping them out.
Helping them out. Great. I would also offer allowing people to be someone that you don't put into a box, right? Someone might be going through something new. You two have been friends since first grade. You've learned a lot about each other and you grow differently. You might know each other for a long time, but there's still depths of the heart that you don't know about each other yet, and it's exciting to find out. So too with God and us. How do we spend time together? How do we check in? How do we listen? How do we help out? These are great ways to think about really practical ways for us this Lent. Prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. The church is really wise in giving us these three ways to deal with this. I was struggling with almsgiving. I have a vow of poverty. I don't really have much money. I didn't know what to give. And a couple years ago, I decided to give blood. I have healthy blood cells. And so once a week for the 4 weeks of Lent, I gave blood. And so just think about what is something that you have. Maybe you have more free time in your schedule these days. How can you give that to someone else? How can you check in with the relationships of your children, your daughters-in-law, your grandchildren? Is there a way to send them a text or an email and say, you know, this Lent, I really want to work on my relationships, and I'd like for the two of us to go get lunch, just me and you. If my mom sent me that text message, I would drive 6 hours home to Washington, D.C. to go have dinner with her. So we don't have to it doesn't have to be these big martyrdoms of giving and fasting, and we tend to fall short when we do that because we've made it about ourselves. So with this Lent, I'd just like to invite you to think, how can we work on this relationship with God, and how can we work on this relationship with others? And what does that look like, right? Maybe it's I'm not going to look at my phone first thing in the morning, or my tablet, or my whatever. Maybe I'm not going to turn on the news. That's rarely consoling. What if I instead of turning on the news the first thing in the morning, what if I wait until lunch? Just a little pause. And then you're allowing yourself a little space to catch your breath. Have your cup of coffee, do your devotional, read the readings for the day, whatever it is you feel comfortable doing. Because I think that little bit of intentionality is much more helpful in building our relationship with God and each other than kind of heroic deeds of bigness. Catholics, we're like, we give up meat on Fridays and then we have lobster. It's like, okay, I think we're missing the plot here a little bit of what we're supposed to be doing. It's like, it's a fish. It's like, okay, well, great. So think about that. If you like to go out to meals, what about if one of those times you don't go out to a meal and you donate that $50? We don't have to do big things, but what are little things that we can do to check in? Something I'm going to do for Lent, I was thinking about this. I think our dreadful winter inspired I was feeling caged and grouchy. I'm going to go on a walk for 20 minutes every day of Lent. Sometimes I'm going to invite people to share the time with them. Sometimes I'm going to pray my rosary. For every day for 40 days, I'm going to go on a walk for 20 minutes outside. It's going to ground me in myself. It's going to ground me in our neighborhood. I'm going to feel less resentful of our climate. And that's just something small I'm feeling called to this Lent. Something to use my body in our neighborhood and work on my relationships. So, and then in terms of prayer, there's a lot of great prayer gifts. There's a lot of things to pray. I'm sure many of you have your own prayer practices already. What's something else? What's something you can add? Pope Leo said an invitation to Lent is to pray for the people in your life. Like actually pray for them. What would that look like? A post-it note on your easy chair. of people in your life. Maybe you already do that. Maybe you do that with your children and grandchildren. Maybe it's to have the printed out list of the ladies from this group and pray for each of them by name every day. Whatever they need, all the things that we don't know about each other, all the hurts we carry, all the discomfort. That's just something practical we can do. How do we pray for each other? And then fasting. What is it we need to fast from? What is it we need to fast from? What is getting in the way of our relationship with God? So the reason we fast isn't to feel hunger. The reason we fast is to make space. So whether it's fasting from social media or fasting from gossip or fasting from, I don't know, you might have that one friend that's always kind of negative. How do we fast from falling into these traps? It doesn't necessarily just need to be alcohol or meat or something like that. How do we fast to make space for something else? So those are my invitations for Lent. We don't need to tie ourselves into pretzels. God meets us exactly where we are. And like your relationships with your children and grandchildren, any effort you appreciate, right? A call, a text, a FaceTime, a letter, a postcard. Let's think about that with our relationship with God. That God so appreciates to be on the receiving end of that for us. Like, I'm gonna try this today, or I'd like you to be with me in this way today, or I'm worried about this, or this person maybe needs some help. I think this is such a generous group of wisdom in this room that trust your gut, that you know what you need, and God will show up for you. So I'd love to answer any questions you have about my life or about Lent, anything that would be helpful for you.
I have one question. Is that I've never heard of a brother in that,
Yeah.
group. And making that decision, was that a long process?
That's a great question. There's not many brothers. Most of the brothers after Vatican II, most of the brothers in America are in the retirement home. They used to be kind of like the plumbers and the farmers and the cooks and the people you wouldn't always see at church, that run in the boiler and all that stuff. I lived in Belize for 2 years after college in Central America, and I worked at a parish, and I noticed that there was 2 lines to meet with Jesuits. There was the front door line to meet with the priest, and that was about baptisms and marriages and whatever. And then there was a line that would go to the kitchen door to meet brother who was cooking in there. And it was mostly women, and they were talking about real things, that their husbands were drinking too much, that they were maybe getting violent, that they couldn't afford the school fees. And so I noticed that there was this more of not a human, but it was less formal. It was less formal than planning a funeral or a wedding or an estate or whatever. It was more like, I can't afford tuition. Can you help me? And so I just noticed that I was like, I think I'm more of a kitchen door kind of person in my personality. I want people to come to me as they are. And so, yeah, and I've never felt called to the priesthood, ever. When I see them up there, I think it's like a dentist. You need a dentist. I like my dentist. I don't want to be a dentist. It's something else I've noticed. So I'm a millennial. I'm 38 years old. Most of my peers don't go to church anymore. You might know this in your own family with some of people my age. What I've noticed, and I did not plan this on the front end, but God has kind of used it, is I can be a bridge to this generation that doesn't go to church anymore. I kind of have one foot in the churchy world and one foot in the normal world, and it's less intimidating. If you haven't been to church in a long time, it's scary to go talk to a priest. That you have a lot of built up stuff for good reasons and for tough reasons. And what I've noticed is, as a brother, people can go for a coffee with me or go get a beer with me, and they can be themselves in a way that it might feel safer to come back, take a half step back. And I really like that role. I get to be it. Yeah.
So as a brother, you teach,
I do.
which is great. And what about the sacraments? Do you
Yeah,
take-
none of them. Same as you.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't do any sacraments. I don't do that at all. Another way to think about the brother-father relationship, and some of you might have worked in healthcare, so you would know this. You need doctors to say 40 cc's of whatever, and then they have like 50 more patients to see. You really want to know what's going on, you ask the nurse.
Right.
And I feel like I could be the nurse in the world right now, where I live with 8 priests. They're great, they're busy, and it's not competition, it's just different ways of serving. How do we serve God's people in the fullness? If you want to know what's going on campus, I would have a better sense of the students. than the priests, perhaps. And it's great. I love that there's different options. I feel like I can be myself in a way that if you come knocking on our door at 3 a.m. and say, I need a priest, you don't really care which priest, right? If you're in an emergency, you need the role. I would get more of a call that says, Brother Matt, I need you right now. It's a personalized relationship in a way that I really appreciate. And I notice with the students is that they notice it. I always ask them, I said, what's the difference? Because I don't always tell them. They know there's a difference. And one of my students said, I don't know, you're kind of like our weird uncle. I'll take it. Yes.
What is the brother population? Are you in all different countries where there are Jesuits?
Yeah,
How many brothers are there?
That's a great question. How many brothers are there? I will tell you, we have the most brothers in the world, the most young brothers in the world in the Midwest province, so this province of the Jesuits. So we have this flow of them. I think there's 20 of us under the age of 50, which would be the most anywhere. And it's kind of countercultural to become a brother, right? Because I grew up Catholic. We all see priests. We know what priests do. There's a little bit more explaining until you see one, and you're like, oh, I get it. Like that's more. I was filling out the application with the Jesuits, and I was working with Brother Jim Boyden, who I'm sure you know. He's a complete crazy person. Okay, so Brother Jim, and he's like playing the fiddle, and he's just like shot a deer, and there's like a deer hide drying somewhere, and he's a total nut. And I'm filling out the application of the Jesuits, and I say, Jim, when does like the priest part turn on? When do I feel that? And he's like, you would have felt that already. So yeah, great question. But there's a growing number of brothers, and I'm proud to see that. Last year we had 3 brothers take vows, which is the most since before the Second Vatican Council.
We should advertise more.
We should advertise more. Yeah. Yes. Brother Boyden is now in Detroit. Yeah.
And then before you ever signed the parishes?
Yes, so Brother Weber was here a couple years ago. Maybe you guys knew Brother Dennis? Yeah, so the Wonder Weber, we would send him anywhere. I mean, he is magnificent, so yeah. Did you have a question, Meg?
Yes, can you talk about the Brothers Keeper project that you started?
Sure, so one of the challenges I've noticed with young people and young men specifically, and this is not just for young men, maybe it's for the men in your group, your life as well. Men have a challenge with intimacy. All the women in here, yeah, we know. Men have a challenge with bonding and sharing, and it's particularly acute right now with young men on college campuses. So they are hyper-connected on their phones. They are hyper-connected. They're seeing what each other's doing all the time, and they are quite alone. And so it's very strange for them. They see all these people in their life, but nobody sees them. Nobody is asking how actually they are. So I've created this group, and we have about 60 young men in it. And they're in groups of 10, and they have a male mentor. And so there's 4 of us, male staff members who facilitate this group. And so you guys are going to get a little preview, but I was just told, I wrote an op-ed for the Plain Dealer, so it'll be coming out, I think, this week about this. How do we address loneliness and isolation for men? After 2020, the country kind of woke up to racial reckoning. We started to pay attention to people we don't always pay attention to. And what happened is we kind of lost the middle in some ways. And I noticed that at a school like John Carroll, which is predominantly male. And there isn't, I basically asked very bluntly, which is an unpopular thing in higher ed, I said, who's caring for the boys? And they were like, well, it's not, we have all these groups. And I said, yeah, but 51% of John Carroll is males. And there's this deep loneliness. There's this hunger to be seen, to be known, to be loved, which we all carry. And something I tell the boys is that, like, genders have no feelings. We're all born with the exact same feelings. Males are taught at a very young age that they're not allowed to express certain feelings. They're taught. I saw a statistic, a psychologist said, by the age of 5, boys realize that there are certain things that they cannot say or do. Like crying is no longer allowed, or that's a girly thing, or, you know what I mean? This kind of verbiage that I'm sure you're familiar with. So what do we do? How do we care for men? And how do we not treat them as a problem? There's a lot of talk about toxic masculinity. That's not a really helpful phrase. But what is the opposite? And how do we celebrate them? How do we celebrate your sons? How do we celebrate your grandsons? How do we celebrate your husbands? How do we tell them they're wonderful? How do we tell them they're beautiful? And maybe you've experienced this. My dad's certainly this way. He he would starve to death with a pantry full of food. Like,
Yeah.
he's wonderful, and he's incompetent in some ways. So, like, he's been with my mom every waking breath. And, like, you know, if God forbid anything happened, like, I would have to send a pizza because he might not make it through the night, you know? And so how do we care for men, and how do we model to men that you are wonderful, and you are beautiful, and you are made in God's image and likeness? And anything you are feeling as a young person, other people have felt before. This is not new, you know? The future's uncertain, the future's scary, jobs, and all, yes, we've all been there. We've all been there. So anyway, so I created this group called Brothers Keeper to create kind of tenderness, intimacy, and vulnerability. And all the people in it are kind of very involved students on campus. So they're all athletes, they're tour guides, they're orientation leaders, they're in the honors program, because I wanted to affect culture. So if I thought to myself, if I kind of aim at like the kind of most involved, kind of cool kids who are deeply lonely, from the outside you wouldn't think that. They all say, I didn't want to be a burden. Like, you are not a burden, right? And you know this from each other. If someone calls and says, I'm having a tough week, on the receiving end, you don't say, oh, you're such a burden to me. Oh, no. It's such a tenderness to say, thank you for calling. Come over. Let's have coffee. How can I sit with you? It's not always about fixing. It's just about paying attention. And so I want to pay attention to the young men. And so I've created this group, and it's going really well. It's really popular. And there isn't anything like it, as far as I can tell, at any university. It's not rocket science. I buy them burritos. We check in. I tell them I love them. You know, it's a bottle we're all familiar with, but it's specific to them, and they feel cared for. And because they feel cared for, they change. They are different, right? They are a better boyfriend. The amount of dating talks I've given these boys is insane, given my lifestyle. Didn't exactly work out for me, but these boys say things to me like, we got in a fight. My girlfriend and I got in a fight. I don't know what to do next. Brother, what do I say? And say, well, you apologize for exactly what you did, and you tell her how you're going to make it up to her. And then I'll get a text message, and we go, it worked. So part of it's like they're doofuses, and they just need a little help. But another guy said, he goes, I really like this girl. I don't know what to do. What do I say? And I said, and I would give this advice to your husbands as well. Ask 2 follow-up questions about anything she says. Hey, I'm reading this book. Don't say, great. Say, tell me about it. What do you like about it? What are you connecting in that? I say, ask two follow-up questions. I'm now like the matchmaker of John Carroll's campus. These boys are all like, oh my God, she really thinks I like her now. The bar is so low. You women have been through so much. So Mary, this is what Brothers Keeper is. And